o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of TAXITV Live. Ooh, my levels are a little rusty-toasty.
I wanted to be here with the applause.
I know, it's overwhelming, isn't it? Anyway, the title of today's show is Why Did This Member Quit Taxi? With Dave Kropf. How are you, Dave?
I am doing so well, Michael. It's so good to talk to you again, and I really and sincerely appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, I'm excited to have you. I've seen your videos and know that you're quite articulate and well-reasoned, and I like having well-reasoned, intelligent people on the show.
Appreciate that.
So Dave did quit Taxi, and we're going to find out why in a little while. But first, let me read you Dave's bio before I ask him why. You know what? I should open the chat room. I need to see those people in the chat room. Pop out chat. There we are. Okay. The chat is now open. Wow, a lot of activity in the chat room today.
Oh, yeah, I told all the folks over at the community about it, and so hello, everybody. QQ's family.
Oh, dear gosh. Pop out chat. Okay, let's do that one more time. There we go. Okay. This I can get rid of. And that I can bring up. Ah, yes, I love producing, engineering my own show at the same time. Live TV. Okay.
Do I understand that or what?
Yes, you do. All right, let me read you Dave's bio so you know who I'm actually speaking with today. Dave Kropf is a composer, educator, YouTuber, podcaster, and host of the popular production music community 52Qs.com. His credits include ABC, Netflix, Sony, Amazon, the NFL Today, the NFL on CBS, SEC football, the Masters Tournament, NCAA March Madness, woohoo, the PGA, even better, NFL Network, Golf Channel, Fox Sports, ESPN, Showtime, Disney, Discovery, Animal Planet, OWN, or OWN as I like to call it, TLC, the History Channel, USA Network, TBS, Bravo, TNT, True TV, Oxygen, Science Channel, Investigation Discovery, Nick, and TFX France. Dave holds a Master's of Music and has over 20 years of teaching experience around the U.S. as well as Europe. He's taught clinics, master classes, lessons, and classroom lectures, and is currently a professor of music and composition at Full Sail University in beautiful Winter Park, Florida. He's a member of CSAC. I want to ask you about that in a while. And the Production Music Association. Is a former member of ASCAP, former member of Taxi. I can throw in there now.
Yeah, I should add that to my bio line.
Please don't.
I'll do that right now.
The Percussive Arts Society, International Association of Jazz Educators, and Music Educators National Conference. I also want to add that you should take a look at his IMDb page to see a bunch of his credits. I looked at it. I can't remember if it was Friday, Saturday. It's several feet long, and as Dave says, they left a lot of the sports stuff out.
Well, yeah, they do. I looked at my placements just this morning, and there's like a collegiate lacrosse, and like those kind of things really don't make it onto IMDb. You know, there's a lot of live sport actually doesn't make it on. The big ones do, like the Super Bowl and AFC Championship.
You know why? Kind of I can tell you why the live sports don't make it on there. It's because it's ephemeral. You get paid different. It's here 1 minute, gone the next. That's why I don't think they even file Q sheets for those.
They do file Q sheets.
Interesting.
At least for my PRO and everything. Yeah, but there have been times when I have gone in and added those IMDb credits. Like, okay, I know I got placement at like Cincinnati Bengals at Tennessee Titans, right? And so that doesn't show up. Or if I get like the rugby national championship or professional bull riding, all that live sports, you're right, it's totally ephemeral, which is good on one hand because there's a lot of eyeballs watching it. Like there's a lot of people watching the NCAA tournament, but I make similar type of royalties off of like an episode of Temptation Island.
Yeah.
Right? Because those shows get rerun and the Q sheets and everything. But yeah, so there are a lot of IMDb credits that aren't on there because those entries don't exist.
Yeah. And with sports, there's local sports, regional sports, Fox Sports, West Coast, Fox Sports, East Coast. It's too hard to understand.
Yeah, it's a lot of TV.
Anyway, welcome again. Thanks for taking the time to do this with me.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, sir.
Let's get right to the heart of the matter, because I'm sure that you and I can burn through 90 minutes together, no problemo. How long were you a Taxi member?
I joined Taxi mid-2016. It was right, when I hit the gas on my production music career. I had signed with another library that was publishing to CBS Sports, and I knew I needed more. Like, I had all my irons in one fire, right? All my eggs, whatever metaphor you want to use. I had all my eggs in one basket, and I knew, as much as that was being successful for me, I knew I needed to diversify. And I thought the best and most direct way to do that would be through Taxi, which I've kind of followed for a long time, and from the old website to the new website and all of that. So I finally joined in 2016 as a deliberate effort to broaden my publisher base. And then that ran pretty much concurrently up through January of 2022. So I guess 6 years or so. And I did dispatch for a couple of years. And so, yeah, a good 6-year stint. And I'll say on the front end, I am not the most prolific taxi driver, passenger.
There you go.
I know there are folks that will pour queues into the system, but because I was looking for a way, and the best, most direct way to diversify my portfolio, Taxi was that avenue for me.
Great. Well, I'm glad that you were a member for 6 years. Thank you for that. Sorry to see you go, but
Well, I have very good reasons, and it's not for any nefarious kind of like, oh, I'm so unhappy, and we can get into that. But yeah, I'm happy to share that story.
Absolutely. Did you create and pitch mostly instrumental cues, or any songs in there at all?
Almost exclusively instrumental cues. I don't think I had anything with vocal. I'm trying to remember if there was a jingle that I did. But no, I think it was all instrumental stuff.
That would be my preference. If I were talented that way, if I had talented fingers, I would go the instrumental route. As I've said many times on TAXITV and on stage at the Road Rally, it's a great way to earn a living. It doesn't, it won't blast you into the financial stratosphere in the first year. It takes 5 or more. But it's like painting houses by day and painting portraits at night. If you're like, oh, but I do records, I want to do my grand opus. Well, great, nobody's stopping you, but wouldn't you rather get really fast on your DAW and learn your sounds and get your studio just totally, dialed in, and earn an income by doing that? So I'm a fan of instrumental cues.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that I talk about all the time, whether it's on my channel or in the community, is the artisan mentality. And that's the approach that I take, and I've said, like, controversially, that what I'm doing isn't art. It's artistic, and it needs to be, it needs to have a good, high quality, using great sounds and all of that. But let's maintain perspective of what a lot of this library music is going to be. It's going to be underneath a highlight, at just like maybe 10 dB, underneath dialogue and sound effects. And it's going to be underneath, a cooking show and then a countdown. It needs to sound great, but it doesn't need to be out in front. It doesn't need to like be the jangly keys trying to grab your attention. It needs to sit in the background. And so the artisan in me says, okay, I'm making a product that I need to deliver, that I want to give someone so that they can use it and ultimately help someone else tell their story in a better way. But if I've done my job right, I blend into the background the same way the costumes do, or the lighting, or the makeup.
Absolutely.
If you notice the makeup in a TV show, then someone somewhere has dropped the ball, unless it's a deliberate thing. And the same with writing. So I'm a part of the team. We're all rowing together in the same boat. But my music is not the most important thing going on in any type of show.
You're absolutely right. The makeup and costume, what a great analogy, although I will admit to sitting next to my wife on the couch watching Downton Abbey till 3 in the morning many nights going, look at that dress. But I grew up in a family-owned retail, so
Right.
I'm into women's dresses, but not in that way.
Yeah, you should. And people win Oscars for costumes, as they should. They win Oscars for the music. But if you notice it, then the costume designer hasn't, like, if in a bad way, like, like if you're watching something and you notice a plot hole and you're like, oh, that's a plot hole, then the writer has dropped the ball somewhere. And so musically, if my music stands out, if somebody like, oh, I've noticed the music and it wasn't the creative choice to have your music be out in front, then you're not doing your job as a composer, as a production music composer specifically.
That's right. And frankly, you could say that sometimes about score. But then there are also times where, music is important to the story and the lyric is important. But that's a whole other, we could do a whole show on that. But for instrumental music, you're right. 95% of the time or more, it's there to bolster an emotion, to create a feeling, an ambiance, all that stuff. But it's not there to be the star. But
everybody thinks, everybody knows E.T. flying across the moon. That's amazing. I get chills just thinking about it. Maestro John Williams, happy birthday, happy 90th. But what about the 70 minutes of incidental music?
Yeah,
that just is there to support the scene, right? That's not what you remember. That is serving the purpose of telling the story. Yeah,
absolutely. Did you have any success with Taxi during the years you remember?
I really did. Absolutely. There are, I pulled up some numbers, just Michael, pulled up some numbers. I joined in 2016 and I only made 80 submissions, which I know that is on the low side of submissions.
80 submissions during the entire 6 years?
During the entire 6 years.
Yeah, that's low.
And I know that, and I recognize that, and so I'm not going to come at you with like, I only got X number of percentage forwards or anything like that, because I know.
Oh, come on, I dare
you. in order to have a seat at the table, you got, or it's like buying more lottery tickets, right? Ultimately, like there's an element of, I don't want to say luck or chance, but it's a competition. You are in competition with other composers.
The more races you run, the better your odds are of winning one.
I like that. I like that way. It sounds a little bit less like gambling. So, 80 submissions. I had 53 forwards and 27 returns. And those 27 returns, I went today, I looked back, and almost all to a number, all of those returns were, it was too long, or it wasn't right. Like I didn't write to the brief. I just wrote something that I had in my catalog. I'm going to spend $5 on this and send it along. And if I'm honest with myself, and once I get my ego out of the way of like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, the screener. Once I got that out of the way, I'm like, I think they're right. I tried to sneak it under the radar, like Indiana Jones hat pulling underneath the door style, and it just wasn't going to work. But the forwards were when I saw the brief, read the brief, and nailed and wrote to the brief.
Yeah.
And so, and there are 3 libraries. I got a total of 4 placements, right?
Okay.
Or 4, not placements, I'm sorry. 50 forwards, 4 deals.
Okay.
And 3 of those deals were with libraries, and 2 of those I work with to this day. And I got those libraries in 2018.
Okay.
One of those libraries, I kind of send something off, and nothing really kind of came out of it. That happens. But the 4th library actually wasn't through a Taxi forward, but was through a relationship that happened through the forums. I had somebody out in San Antonio, Larry McGee, right? He's like a dobro. He plays fiddle, and I was just posting my my cues up on the peer-to-peer forum, which is worth its weight in gold. It's absolutely, if you want like really honest feedback from the veterans who have done it, that's what really helped me. Putting stuff on the peer-to-peer, Larry, here's my stuff. He's like, I have a library who is looking for epic Americana music. You write epic music, I write Americana music. Let's collaborate. And so we did. And so we wrote a bunch of cues. And at that point, I was able to then reach out to the library and create the connection. And so I work with them to this day. and I'm sorry, Michael, you didn't see any of that money.
No, but we accomplished our goal
created,
was by having you in the taxi ecosystem and doing.
absolutely.
You know taxi, and you know me well enough. I mean, we're not best buddies or anything, but I think you've watched enough Taxi TV to know that I'm constantly telling people, do it all. Go to the rally, be active on the forum, be active in the chat room during Taxi TV, meet other people, because what they do better than you is an asset to you, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
And that's a classic example.
Yeah, and so what happened and why what happened was, because I knew I needed taxi to diversify my portfolio. That means that I already had relationships that were pretty hot and heavy. I just needed to diversify. So getting some taxi forwards and getting some placements, like you mentioned TFX France, that was from a placement directly from a taxi forward, and it's in France, and the publisher is in Switzerland, and we reconnected just last month, and he wants another album of music. And again, sorry, Michael, you never saw a nickel beyond the $15 that I spent to make those submissions, but that's the deal. That's the deal that you enter into, and I think it's a bargain. And again, I'm not like here to like preach to the choir here, but it absolutely worked for me. But the reason I had to step back was because I couldn't keep up. And I realized, like, my last year, all of 2021, I did 5 submissions. Not because I didn't think there were anything that were any opportunities which were good. Tons of great opportunities. But I was just so busy that I couldn't write to those libraries. I had, this library needs an album, this library needs 3 albums, this library needs this.
Yeah.
And so I just had, it was, to be honest, it was kind of a fiscal decision. But if that changes, if a library drops the ball and no longer wants, I don't know, whatever, then I know Taxi's there, and I'm going to jump back in, I'm going to subscribe, and I'm going to start pitching, and hopefully get another library relationship and get that off the ground.
Several months ago, I saw one of your videos. I think you and I know that we met because you actually invited me to speak to your students at Full Sail some time ago. Yep. But I think I'd forgotten about that. Probably, COVID kind of wiped my brain, I think.
Yeah, and it's been like 4 or 5 years. So it's been a while.
Right, and there was COVID in the middle of that. So anyway, I saw one of your videos in which you said the taxi isn't just about getting a single piece of music forwarded and signed, but it's actually more about using taxi to get introductions, which you just made the case for, to publishers and music libraries, and building relationships. And I know that almost every time you've ever mentioned taxi, when you're doing stuff in 52 Qs, which we'll talk about in a bit, and you've mentioned it, that you talk quite frequently about it with your students at Full Sail, the relationship thing. But you mentioned something the other day. You said, I use taxi like a publicist. It's not just a matter of getting one thing in one person's hand and hoping that thing gets signed and that makes money. No. It's about, how can I get introduced to these people? Taxi is my publicist. So do you want to, I think you did just elaborate, but.
No, I can absolutely unpack that. Because, in this industry still, in the modern era of internet and social media, and you don't have to live in LA to get your music on TV. I mean, I live in Orlando, and I'm collaborating with somebody who lives in San Antonio, and we're publishing music that gets placed in France. This is truly global, but relationships are still the currency of the business. And so if you're looking to create the relationship, then how do you get there? Now, it's true. There are some other services you can subscribe to that will get you a laundry list of all the libraries. You could even Google it yourself, and that's fine. You could go and do that. But let's look at that. Let's unpack that a little bit. How much time would you spend looking for the libraries that accept cold, unsolicited submissions? Right. That's research number one.
Quality libraries.
Quality libraries that aren't just vacuuming up everything so they can pad out their library so they can hopefully pitch to somebody. Quality libraries that have active relationships with production companies.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, that are a fit for you. Like, you write, ukulele, happy, clappy, glockenspiel music, but they're like dark tension trailer. Doesn't matter. They're not going to use your cues. even if they do vacuum it up, they don't have the resources to actually place it. So there's all of that. And so you can go and Google that by yourself. Go for it. Enjoy your trip down Google Lane. But the hours that you would spend doing that, I did the math the other day, and in the money that I spent in my 6 years at Taxi, it would have cost me about $10 a week. Like if I like $10 a week, that so if I did, that's what, maybe an hour at less than minimum wage.
Right. So you're talking about all your membership fees for the 6 years and all your submission fees worked out to $10 a week.
To $10 a week, as far as what the value that it would. So would I have spent less than 1 hour per week finding homes for my music?
No.
And so that's where the publicist idea comes in mind. That's where Taxi is an A&R service, not a direct A, B, I submit, it gets placement, I make royalties, and we all do a freeze frame, jump in the air, Toyota commercial. That's how old I am.
I was going to say there's a reference.
It's the beard showing, the white and the beard showing right there. But Taxi shortchanges that. Again, you can Google it, go for it, enjoy yourself. But for me, $10 a week is a steal to have someone vet these libraries, somebody find the libraries who are already in a receiving mentality to take my music. And the only thing that I have to do is A, make sure it's good, and B, make sure that it matches the brief. Because once I stopped trying to like squeeze things in through, essentially it's a little bit of laziness on I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just saying for me, I'm like, hey, this might be a fit, so I'm going to try to squeeze it in and get rejected. I'm out $5 and I feel grumpy about it. No, that's not being honest with myself. But once I cued into the brief, how to write to the brief, learning about production music structure and all of those nuts and bolts, the mechanics, then it's free introductions. Now, ADQs, landing in 4 libraries, I think those are pretty good stats. If we're talking percentages, I think those are really good stats. And 2 of those libraries, I have active relationships today that I connected with in 2018 and 2019.
And you'll be making money from those for the next 2, 3, 4 decades. Absolutely. Pretty much as long as you're alive, that's, as long as that stuff is somewhat evergreen and, doesn't fall off the tree.
There's a that I wrote in 2018 that still nets me about $20 or $30 a quarter. Now, is that going to pay my bills? No, but imagine if I have hundreds of those types of cues in the system, and then the economics of scale kicks in.
Yep.
And that's the magic of this business, but it takes time. And for me, what unlocked Taxi and what made it like, wow, this is a no-brainer for me, was thinking about it as an A&R publicist. Because I guarantee you are not going to get a publicist pitch your music for less than $10 a week.
Yeah.
You're just not.
Going back to the numbers and how they pan out long term, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but it was literally sitting 2 feet from me on my desk. This sheet was what I used on stage at a road rally, probably around 2016, 2017. We have a Taxi member who's a certified financial planner and very much into the library side of things. And I called him up and said, what if somebody made, starting at the age of 35, started making instrumental cues, and they did it until they retired at 65. And let's say the first year they make $1,000, which is probably a little high. But if they start at 35, at the end of a year, maybe they made $1,000. Next year, $1,500. Next year, $1,850. Next year, $2,400. Then it takes a dive back down to $1,900, then back up to $3,600. So these numbers were all put together by somebody who's actually done this in real life and has a very tight circle of people like Dean Kropf or his and Barden. They're his friends. So this was not put together, it wasn't blue sky. This is pretty reality based. At the end of those 30 years, when this fake composer, he's going to be making $112,000 a year, which personally, I think if he's been doing it this long, this well, this is half of what he would be making, because I know Taxi members that are making multiple 6-figure incomes. So Then you apply 5% compounded interest to that. And I think we deducted taxes from this, and we figured out that in the end, at 65 years old, this composer, who probably had a day job for the first 10 years of this, but just on the compositions alone is going to net $1.679 million. So almost $1.7 million is what that composer is going to retire with. I don't think a lot of rock stars, or at least people who get signed to record,
not anymore.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's a really nice way to do something you love and earn a real income if you do it well. Anyway, a little off track, but
no, I think it's a good point. But there's some footnotes, that should be added to that, which is, if you're working a day job and outputting that much, then that's a lot of sacrifice. Or that's a lot of getting up early. Like for me, I found my biggest productivity by waking up at 4 o'clock every morning. I call it my miracle morning. I get up at 4 o'clock and I do some exercise, maybe do a little meditation, make some coffee. I'm in the studio no later than 5:30 every morning.
Yeah.
And so before the rest of the world gets up, I've put in 2-3 hours worth of work. Now,
you're married, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been married almost 30 years, and so no kids. But my wife Shannon, she is a music director in her own right, and she's an arranger and super talented, really talented, and a music historian and all of that.
Wow.
So she understands music, but also I put great value in relationship, in not burning out everything in your life. The name of the music, all at the altar of art or whatever.
Right.
And so one of the reasons that I haven't, I don't have, making triple figures or 6 figures with production music is as a conscious choice that I'm not going to spend every waking hour cranking out music. And I think if you're looking at making, after, X number of years, 6 figures and all of that, it will require A, good output, B, knowing what you're doing, right? Because one of the things we haven't factored in is the learning curve. And I think some folks, who I've seen kind of bag on taxi, if you don't mind me saying, I think some people who bag on taxi don't understand the industry, and so they're putting their lot in with other people who are seasoned professionals, and then they're wondering why they get rejections. And I used this analogy earlier. It's like learning how to barbecue by submitting your food in a barbecue competition. You will learn the ropes, but that can be a little bumpy, right? So when you're putting your music beside someone else and you don't really understand how production music works and how you maintain a certain mood or emotion and how you can't change tempos and all those kind of things, this is where the forums really come in handy, and the peer-to-peer forum is very, very helpful.
Dave's talking about the Taxi forum, which is at forums.
Right, the Taxi forums.
Forums with an S.taxi.com.
Which were great for me. So if you don't know the industry, then making $1,000 your first year is going to be really difficult. But if you know the industry, you hit the ground running, and you're able to get up at 4 a.m, or if you're able to stay up for an extra 3 hours after your SO, your significant other, goes to bed or whatever, and then working that day job next to it, for a while it's gonna feel like you have 2 full-time jobs, and that
absolutely.
That can be emotionally ringing.
Do people ever win the big prize without making the big sacrifice? Not really.
No, and you just have to decide for yourself if that is worth it.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't see me stopping teaching, right? I spend as much time in the community at 52Qs making YouTube videos as I do making production music. If I were to just move everything out, right, like Dead Sea style, just get out of the way, then I imagine I could get to that 6 figures. But it just so happens for me, where I'm in my goals, my career goals, I don't see myself doing that, just personally.
We've got a taxi member named Randon Purcell that gets up at 4:30 in the morning, and I've watched him. It's so rewarding being me, being the owner of Taxi, the guy who had this idea 31 years ago. And I get to see people like Randon or Dean Kripane or Steve Barton, many others go from zero to hero because they all made that sacrifice. And none of them are going to retire in a trailer park in Ensenada, Mexico, because they can't afford to live in America, other than California, because they will have mailbox money coming in the six-figure range for the rest of their lives because of the sacrifice they made now. So you can make the sacrifice later and retire on a very skimpy budget and be scared to death about your very survival later in life, or you could take your talent and your proclivity to make music and do 5 or 10 years of sacrificing now and retire safely then. But that's a personal choice. That's how I would do it, but I can't make that choice for everybody.
But there's also different what success means to different people.
Yeah.
For some people, being a success is just getting one placement, and they're like, okay, I'm going to retire a success. And I put air quotes just because that means different things to different people.
Absolutely.
And I'm here to say that's completely okay. And you, it has to be rewarding for you. And so anyway, I'm getting a little philosophical there.
No, it is. Honestly, I didn't understand when I had the concept for this company that my biggest thrill would be the lives we've changed. People who had the dream. People accuse Taxi of selling dreams. No, we don't sell dreams. We help dreams come true, but you got to do the work.
Well, and it sounds like an after-school special, to say like, your success is my success, right? Hallmark moment, the more you know. But it really is true. This is coming from somebody who's been in higher education since 2001, and I taught drum set lessons long before then. So I've been 21 years in higher education, and the reason I wanted to be in higher education, and the reason why I will always be in higher education, regardless of my level of success as a composer, is because those light bulb moments. When I get a message from one of my students and say, I got a placement, or I don't know, I won a Grammy or whatever, I get that electricity, the same type of electricity I get when I hear my music on TV. Yep. I get that same electricity when I see a student of mine succeed on whatever metric of success that they have established for themselves. And so I don't see it as an either or thing. I'm not just treading water. I'm not just hoping to get my big break. I'm going to teach. It's baked into me. My grandmother, my mom, my sister, my aunt, all teachers. It's woven into the Kropf genes, and so I just can't not teach. I mean, listen to me right now. I'm slipping into lecture mode because I can't help myself, and I'm sorry, Mark.
What one of the great
Mike?
I prefer Michael just because I had a book when I was a kid about Mike the Steam Shovel, and I didn't want to be a construction worker when I grew up, so I asked my parents to call me Michael. Anyway,
I go by Dave, so I truncate everybody's name. So
one of my greatest moments is the owner of Taxi. We had a Taxi member named Peter Sevo, who was in his 80s and 90s. I believe he was in his 80s when he joined. He'd written and recorded music during World War II. And he was a sailor, and he was a salty old sailor, and we got him hooked up with a company that specializes in vintage music recorded back in the day. And they loved his catalog, and they bought it, and they paid him an upfront, a nice upfront for all that stuff. And then he ended up probably, if I had to guess, I'd say probably made $10,000 a year extra income on top of his Social Security. He got some placements in like real movies, like big feature films and stuff. And I called him one day and said, Peter, I just want you to know that he's a little hard of hearing. I said, just want you to know, all of us at Taxi are really, really, like, just from the bottom of our hearts, we're so happy for you that you're making this extra money, in your very golden years. And he said, young man, I don't give a shit about the money. He's cursing at me with his hard of hearing voice. He said, it's not about the money. This stuff has been sitting on a shelf for 70 years. All I ever wanted was for millions of people to hear my music. And because of the connection you made for me, that's happening on a regular basis. I had to go shut my door. I had a good cry. It was most, it's like, wow. I had an idea, and look how it's changed this guy's life. And I mean, I remember the day that Peter Sevo died, his son reached out to me and the publisher. And the publisher and I got on the phone and just had a good cry together, because for both of us, it was the culmination of all of our hard work rolled into one guy who exemplified, good things come to those who wait, I guess. It's probably
because at the heart it's about relationship.
Yeah.
Right. It's the currency in this industry. Absolutely currency.
So it sounds like your experience with Taxi was realistic and good and productive, and now we know why you quit. Quitter. No, it's fine. I don't hold it against you as far as you know.
I know it's there. When the time comes, I absolutely will rejoin, because it'd be like hiring a publicist. Okay, I need to create more connections, because I can't handle any more connections right now, because I can't serve any more clients.
Only so many hours in the day.
And so seeing, like, on the forums, people talk about 30 or 40 libraries that they're with, that blows my mind. So I need to know how they do that, because I feel like I keeping up with everything else I got going on, YouTube channel, community, full-time teacher, all of that. I am pretty full up.
Well, I got to tell you, that guy that you're talking about, which I'm going to reference in a minute when I read the stuff that I found on the forum over the weekend, he is a single parent of a young child, she's probably in like second grade now. I've actually been to his house in Nampa, Idaho, and met his daughter and stuff. He was a full-time professor teaching communications at Boise State. And he he'd put his daughter to bed and go out in the tool shed in the backyard, which is where he had his studio, and his studio was nothing to crow about, and just worked and worked and worked, and he knew nothing. It's like was telling Dave before we went live, this guy, Matt Vanderbilt, many of you know him and you've seen him on TAXITVs and stuff. He would literally use his QWERTY keyboard as his musical keyboard when he got started. He literally knew nothing and figured it out just by sticking with it, not giving up, and now he's amongst our most celebrated, productive, and probably highest income earning members. Yeah. Anyway, I'd like to read...
Much respect.
Yep. When you meet him, he's funny and goofy and smart and lovable, and respect is the word that comes to mind, because how many people are that nice and that hardworking? He doesn't take himself seriously, and I think that's gone a long way for him. Too seriously, anyway. I literally was looking at our forum over the weekend, and this is truly by pure coincidence, and no way an effort to make you feel guilty at all, Dave, not at all. Anyway, I saw this post, and we're going to play you. I saw a video that Dave did with two Taxi members named Jeff LaPlante and Chris Moser. And literally, I just ran into this post over the weekend, and it was from Jeff LaPlante. And the title of the header on the post is, "A Great 2 Years, Does It Make Sense to Renew?" And he posted this a week ago, Sunday, July 19th. And he said, "I have Taxi to thank for all my contacts and deals, and I am so appreciative. But do I just renew as a thank you? You could, knowing that I will not have much use for the service anymore. I'm connected to 6 different libraries that expect new music every few months, as well as a library that's sending weekly briefs to composers. These are more than enough to keep me busy and find homes for my 150 to 200 cues a year, which I can produce comfortably. I'd very much like to stay loyal to Taxi," thank you for that thought, Jeff, "by paying $200 a year, in which I probably won't be submitting music. It just seems unnecessary. I thought about renewing just so I can go to the road rally, but the flight and the hotel costs are more than I can afford. So that's no longer a motivation. Any thoughts?" Put it out there to the community. And the first guy, I believe this was the first response, was from the aforementioned member, Matt Vanderbilt, the guy working out of the tool shed. Very lovable. So Tuesday, June 21st, a couple days later, Matt says, "A different perspective here, but 6 libraries really isn't all that much. What happens when business slows up for just 3 or 4 of them? Then all of a sudden you're out 50% of your total of your library workload. I have music in well over 30, maybe even 40 libraries. I still submit to Taxi listings and keep renewing my membership. You never know when business is going to get slow for some companies. That's true. My mantra has always been to scatter my music as far and as wide as possible, and I will continue doing that until, well, probably forever. 6 libraries may feel like a lot when you're first getting traction in this world, but really this is just the start. 2 cents from a guy who's been doing this a long time now, Matt." Then
he has the credits and the royalty statements to back that to back that
Oh,
up. So
absolutely,
I
he
can't
does.
argue with that. Yeah.
And here's a post same day from Casey Hurwitz, a longtime member and frequent poster on the forum, and a really like cherished member of the community. There are folks to whom I definitely would suggest don't renew. Usually it's because of a lack of commitment, willingness to adapt to contemporary music. We see that a lot. Just not having the ability to generate forward worthy tracks. Or folks who just want to incessantly complain about screeners' returns. You are not one of those. You are having good success with Taxi. Some points to consider here. $200 is not a lot of money in terms of expenses for what we do. If you don't renew and wait more than a certain amount of time, it'll be $300 to come back. That's because we give a $100 discount to returning members. Even one more library contact can mean a lot. And then there's the Road Rally, which I highly recommend. That's our convention for those of you who don't know. Good luck with your decision, Casey. And then a follow-up post from Jeff LaPlante on Thursday, June 23rd, which very recently. I flipped that page too quickly. Let's see, where did I go? This is Jeff LaPlante says, I renewed. Like a sign from the heavens, a brand new library called me this morning and is signing multiple tracks that were forwarded last week. Can't hurt to make more contacts, right? Thanks, everyone, Jeff. So let's discuss Jeff LaPlante and Chris Moser, who were featured in a recent video that you did on your podcast. It was entitled Tips and Strategies for Maximizing Taxi. So with your permission, I'd like to play a clip from the interview that you did with Jeff and Chris. I think this clip only has Jeff in it. It's
just Jeff, I think. Yeah.
All right, let me... doing technical stuff while hosting, and here we go.
And so, Jeff, starting with you, how long have you been with Taxi, and what are some of the key takeaways, or maybe talk about your journey to really finding success with Taxi?
Well, this time around, it's been about a year and a half, and I say this is probably the first time that I've done Taxi with fidelity, did it the right way. I've been a Taxi member probably 3 or 4 times in the past 10 years, but this is the only time that I've done it correctly. The other times, I had just finished an album with my band, and I was like, all right, we have these 12 tracks. Let's see if we could get them out to the public. And I was just working with 12, and of course, the rejections start coming, the critiques start coming. Oh, in verse number 2, you got to change this line, or we don't like the saxophone part in the intro. And by that time, my band has been out of the studio now for months. We have no way of going back just to change one lyric, so I'm stuck getting rejections and critiques for as long as I'm a Taxi member, that album run. And then, of course, a couple of years later, the band goes back into the studio, and I'm like, okay, these are even better than the last set of 12 songs. Let's try Taxi again. And then the same thing just keeps on happening. And eventually you do kind of give up and get discouraged. This time around, I'm just by myself. I'm doing instrumental cues. Don't have to worry about changing lyrics around. It's just proven to be much better for me, because in my studio I can go and make a little small tweak and then resubmit it a couple days later, to a different listing, obviously.
So when you say doing it correctly, and I'm doing big air quotes in case you're listening to the podcast, what does that mean? What does doing it correctly mean to you?
Well, first I had to educate myself, which I had never done before. So first thing I did was I bought Steve Barton's book, right? And then I bought the Demystifying the Genre and Demystifying the Cue. Those are Dean's books. Both great guys, Taxi success stories. They're on the forums. They're on Facebook, social media. So I read everything and anything I could about television production music. Also studying the Forwards blog, studying song structure, knowing what it means to tell a story with your music, as opposed to getting the critiques that you're too repetitive. Also, a big thing for me is I'm finally using the correct sounds. I'm using Omnisphere. I'm using a lot of sounds from Splice. I'm using sounds from Output. Before that, I just never had the means to purchase the correct sounds. Like I, for a long time in my 20s, I didn't have much money to buy the equipment that I needed. In my 30s, I started my family, so I didn't have time to produce the music. Now, all of a sudden, in my 40s, I have the means financially to buy the gear that I need, and I have the time to do it because now my kids are in their teen years. So
Right.
everything's kind of coming together.
Wow. Very
those
articulate.
guys. Yeah, Jeff, and Chris both. They're just machines, man.
Yeah.
And that full interview, he talks about how he spent like a couple of months just honing his craft. Absolutely honing his craft. So
Yeah, it can be done.
Those are great guys.
And as he mentioned, his first couple of passes at Taxi didn't work out because he was making the classic mistake of going to a studio that they paid. The stuff was etched in stone forever. And he's pitching probably some square pegs for round hole opportunities. And at some point, he figured it out. And lo and behold, now he's becoming successful. So it substantiates what I've always said, which is just do what we tell you to do. It's not that we're not the Gestapo. We're just trying to make it so easy for you guys by laying it all out. Just you can't go to a gym and build muscle and lose pounds if you don't do what the trainer is asking you to do.
And that's something we all didn't talk about. And I need to say, I have zero skin in the game. I mean, you're not like I'm not sponsored by you. You haven't like gifted me a membership, right? I paid my $300 and $200 or whatever, just like anybody. So I have zero skin in how successful you are. But another huge benefit of Taxi is the listings, which are free. Right? Just if you want to know what libraries are actively looking for, go to their listings. They all have references. They all tell you exactly what they need. They tell you how long they need it. And you can look and say, okay, so there are 4 searches for hip hop. I guess hip hop's hot right now. And here are all of these active references. And as far as the research goes, you're doing my job for me. I mean, whether you subscribe or not, that is worth its weight in gold right there.
Do you know who Robin Frederick is?
I don't. No.
She wrote, do I have one nearby? Shortcuts to Hit Songwriting. These are the 3 ebook versions of it. Anyway, best-selling book, and I should disclose I published it. Probably came out 12 or 13 years ago. Been a best-selling songwriting book that people love. She also wrote the only book on the market about songwriting for film and TV. This episode's sponsored by Rockstar and the burps that come with it. Anyway, Robin's book on writing songs for film and TV, which is very different from writing songs for radio and records. My point being that one day I said to Robin, she's not a 30-year-old lady. I said, Robin, how do you stay abreast? You are like a walking encyclopedia of what's happening now on pop radio. Name any genre, and she can rattle off hits of the last 6 months like that and tell you what works, what doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. How do you stay abreast? And she goes, I look at your listings. So
right there.
Yeah, a woman who I, idolize, put her on a pedestal. She's using the Taxi references and listings to accomplish what you just said. So thank you for reminding me and reminding our viewers about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that video that you did with Jeff and Chris, you said that several of your students at Full Sail, maybe many, have expressed their frustration with Taxi, presumably because they get so many rejections, I would guess. Would you say that those frustrated students haven't yet figured out what successful members like Jeff and Chris have, or as you so eloquently, which I can't do, eloquently put it, maybe they just haven't cracked the code? Do you think that's the case for those frustrated members?
Yeah, I think it's not just Full Sail students, but also students that I teach outside of university and the 52Qs and all of that. I think it's part of not understanding like what the music is looking to accomplish, not understanding that you need to serve the editor and the editor's job, and how they look at music and how they process music and how they think about it. They're looking at a waveform. They need to see transients and spikes and edit points and all of that stuff. And so if they're coming from it from a songwriting background, they're coming from it from an EDM, or maybe they write a hip hop, but they want to write hip hop for TV. Well, as soon as you take like a rapper off of a hip hop track, you're left with a 1 or 2 bar loop, which is going to be way too repetitive for use in TV. And so I think it's making that switch. And so some of the frustration is, in my experience from talking to students, is making that shift from writing music and that's going to go out and serve as art, that's going to go out and somebody's just going to listen to, versus music that needs to fit in a much, much larger picture and serves a very different purpose. And so making that switch, and this is kind of what I was saying earlier,
Right.
they submit things up to Taxi not having learned that, and they end up learning it through returns, and they get the feedback, and their ego gets bruised. I've been there. 27 returns of 80 submissions. I get it. But that is that's their learning crucible versus like taking a lesson or something like that. And so again, it's like learning how to grill barbecue wings by submitting your music alongside other people who have been doing it for a very long time, which is one way to learn how to do it. So I think that's the frustration. And also sometimes if you don't understand necessarily some of the screener, I think some of the way the screeners can be kind of this mysterious kind of the number, right? It's just 416, and so it feels.
And we do that for a reason. We've actually had threats.
Totally.
We haven't in many years, but we've had one guy in particular. I'm going to come over there with a baseball bat and rearrange their faces. Okay. Well.
I completely understand the need for anonymity, in this process. So this is an indictment on that. But I think for a student who's getting a return and might get something filled out with some information which might not be as clear. Now, I will say, like the legacy critiques versus your current critique system, I think is a lot better. I think that's something that Taxi absolutely improved on. Instead of like just a punch list of yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, return. It feels like there's deeper feedback. But just that whole screening process and not understanding maybe why you got a rejection, and being honest with yourself, your music just might not be ready. I mean, you just might not be ready, and that's okay. Everybody wasn't ready at some point in their career. Nobody was born ready to write production music.
One of the things that
somehow.
Thank you for the compliment on the improved critiques. One of the things that we added was a box on the right-hand side of the page that says, the reason you were forwarded or returned for this submission is, and it'll say, because 80% of the time, people just don't nail the genre. It's like, dude, did you read the request? It clearly specified a genre. We had one the other day. It was for vintage 60s jazz. And the only one submission came in. Guess what it was? Metal. Somebody sent in metal that had no relationship to jazz whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. And maybe it was recorded in the 60s or something. I don't know. But
well, I teach production music at Full Sail. My class is teaching production music. And so I see every month I see students come in, and they have their preconceived notion about what they do and what they want to do. And so they write something and they think, hey, I think this will work, as opposed to this is, because I take kind of the role of the publisher. I'm the library. I need this. Here are your 3 brief options this week. Write to one of these 3 briefs. But instead, they write what they know and hope it works.
Right,
and
because
I
it's so good, somebody will I'm sorry, I stepped all over you there.
No, I'm just saying, I can only imagine that's happens a lot through the screeners. I know for me, that's why I got a lot of returns, was I was trying to, if you make hammers, everything looks like a nail, right? So yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people, I believe, deep down inside, if they're really being honest with him or herself, are thinking, this is so freaking good that even though it's not really what they're asking for when they hear it, they're going to be so impressed and in love with it, they're going to forward it to the company, and the company or the music supervisor is going to forget what kind of music the supervisor and EP or director thought would work in that scene. They're going to go, doesn't matter what we thought, this is so good, let's just put it in the scene. Right. And that's not how the business works.
Well, the flip side of that is they just might not know any better. They just might not know any better. And so part of them learning to do that is taking their lumps. Man, when I first got started, this was back in 2014 and 2015, I was very lucky and blessed to have a publisher who was eternally patient with me.
Wow.
And so everything from my titles to my mixing to my form and to my structure, I mean, it really was, a gauntlet of rejections and gate. I had to submit to a music supervisor who then submitted it to somebody else but I took a ton of lumps. My first season with the NFL, like I was so hungry for it, I wrote like 17 tracks and only like 5 of them actually made air that year. But that was hours and hours and hours of production and 12 tracks, which I guess just live in a library somewhere. But that's all right because I was learning and I listen to them now. I'm like, yeah, I can totally see why those didn't get in the air.
And someday you're going to get a quarterly from CSAC that's going to have, an airing of one of those things that you thought was dead in the water, just because it was right for a scene.
Yep, I've already seen that. A cue called "Don't Piss Me Off" because it had pizzicato strings, and it just showed up. Some music supervisor somewhere was digging through the catalog, in the search engine, and there was like the heavens parted, the angels sang, and "Don't Piss Me Off" was the perfect fit, and it showed up on the cue sheet.
But that's a great title for anybody that knows what pizzicato is, and if they know that do 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 do, is pizzicato. Excuse me, the editor's sitting in a cubicle working at 2:00 in the morning trying to make a deadline for an air date, and they know that they need something sneaking around the bushes, peering in a window, and they need some pitsy stuff for that, and they see "Don't Piss Me Off." Ooh, that sounds like it might work. Lo and behold. Yep. So just by good titling, you probably got that placement. Nice going.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I'm a huge fan of good titles. As I'm sure you've noticed, about 10 to 15% of taxis industry listings have language in them that the companies have actually requested that we include in the listings. And that language says, in so many words, that they only want to work with experienced composers who know the drill. Now, some of our members read that and go, experienced composers? Oh, come on. Well, I'm really good. I may not be experienced at this film and TV thing. And it's not about your level of talent as a composer by itself. That is not in its own little box over there. It's also about it says composers who know the drill. Knowing the drill, in my opinion, is the key phrase here. Why, in your opinion, do some companies only want to hear music from and work with musicians who know the drill?
Well, it's like, again, 2014, 2015, I had a publisher who was willing to educate me. That's an exception and not the rule. I understand that. I'm very fortunate. But to having to like educate composers on form and structure, and working with composers who aren't going to flip out when you throw a contract asking for their publishing share. No, I'm not going to give up publishing. I was told on a Facebook forum to never give up publishing, so I'm never going to do that, and then walk away. And now they're looking at you like, Michael, why did you send these people to me? They don't understand the industry, which is okay. Nobody was born understanding the industry, but when they say they know the drill, they know that they're going to work with composers who not only know how to write good music, right? Because good music is a baseline. Everybody has to have good music, but understands the industry, understands about edit points, and aren't going to lose their crap when you put a contract and they ask for exclusive rights and they ask for copyright. No, I have to submit my copyright. Well, no, we need to control the copyright because we need to control where its licensing goes. But if you're going to flip out when somebody asks for the publishing share, then they just don't want to bother. I don't blame them. I don't blame them for not wanting to saddle up to that bar and have to kind of bring somebody along. Not every publisher has the time, energy, or bandwidth to do any of that. That's how I feel about it.
Very, very fortunate to have that publisher that was patient with you. And most of them are really nice people, but they don't have the bandwidth, as you said, and they're not that patient, and they can't spend, their job is not to educate you. Their job is to make money with music and share that money 50-50 with you in basic terms.
Absolutely. And I was so lucky because what I brought to the table was, kind of high energy, orchestral, epic hip hop music, which is all over sports broadcasting. And this library didn't have that in their catalog.
Wow.
And so they knew that I could do it. And so it was kind of a loss leader for them. They were investing in me. And because of that, I've been with them for years and years. I've turned down libraries because those libraries are competitors with this other library.
Wow.
Right. And and that was a decision that I made, both financially and personally, because what did I say at the beginning? Relationship is currency.
Yeah.
If I would have started farming my cues out to the other publisher, right, and then suddenly I get a placement through publisher B and publisher A didn't get a placement, and we're on the same cue sheets, now suddenly that relationship is in danger. And you got to dance with the girl what brought you, right? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to honor that relationship. And that was a call that I made. I had to back away from another library deal because I came to find out that they were direct competitors in the same sports space. And I ran the risk of my cues showing up on the same cue sheet as my publisher A, who had invested into me. And
did you let publisher A know? You don't seem like, hey, guess what I did for you guys today kind of guy. But I hope that you did have a more subtle way to let them know, because that was very menschy of you, very honorable.
Yeah, I did. I talked to my music supervisor kind of over there and just said, because I asked him, I said, oh, this feels like really weird. And I had a check right in my soul, my spirit. I'm like, oh, this feels really weird. And I feel like I'm dangerously sawing on the log that I'm standing on or on the branch that I'm standing on. And yeah, I could have done it. I could have torched that relationship, but then what? For a couple of extra placements or whatever,
right? And
that wasn't worth it for me, because again, relationship is currency.
And you got that back in spades, because they will never forget that moment. And
that publisher has gone on to publish for other networks, and so then they brought me along. That publisher, that same publisher A, has gone on to do custom bespoke production music, like with the Masters tournament, and he called me. I'm one of 2 composers writing custom music for the Masters movie documentary. And so
that's great.
If I had torched that branch, none of that would have happened. So I have to do what's right by me. Relationships are currency, in no amount of royalties for me. This is just me. No amount of royalties that I would have gotten from this other publisher would have been worth torching that relationship.
When I grew up in a little farm town in Illinois, and populated by mostly farmers and kind of blue-collar factory worker types. My parents and my grandparents had a store down on Main Street. And when I was a kid, at a very early age, I would do stuff like pin ticket Levi's or go down and sweep floors or whatever, and I grew up in the family business. And my grandfather, who was an immigrant from Russia, back in the day, in his very thick accent, said to me one day, if a client or if a customer comes in and they want a red flannel shirt and all we have are blue flannel shirts, take them by the hand, look both ways, cross the street, take them to our competitor across the street, and show them where the red flannel shirts are in our competitor's store, and you will have a customer for life.
That's right.
Same thing.
It's a relationship. It's a relationship.
And guess what is about 30 inches from my head right now is an oil painting portrait of my grandfather that I inherited, 25 years ago or something. And that's exactly what that painting on the wall means. He looks like, kind of a boardroom. He's wearing a suit and stuff. Mm-hmm. But it reminds me every day of do the right thing. If you treat your customers well, you will always have a business. Okay, let's see. Where did I leave off? It's my observation that the majority of independent musicians share the long-held belief that everybody in the music business is just out to screw them in the context of doing business, not the other kind of screwing them. Do you agree or disagree with that long-held belief?
I think music is called the music business, right? And everything we're doing here is business. If you're asking someone to give you money for a thing that you make, it's business. And I think some folks lose track of that. And so when somebody makes a business decision, then they feel personally affronted. Like that past story. If I would have gone with publisher B because that may have been the best fiscal business decision at the time, that would have damaged that relationship. And I think folks who feel that everybody's out to get them is losing sight of that. Now, that's not to say that there aren't nefarious players looking to take advantage of very hungry people out there. And I've heard that kind of sentiment lobbied against Taxi.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard like, it's a pay to play scam and everything. And I'm just like, oh,
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah. It's if it was a pay to play scam, it wouldn't have been around for 31 years. I mean, that's just no con, regardless of how long, is going to make it for 31 years.
No, actually, there was one. What's his name? The Wall Street guy, Bernie Madoff. But he was an exception.
All right, he's the exception that proves the rule. Let's say that. But and I've seen that lobbied against other schools and going to school and getting a degree as a scam. It's like, no, you get out what you put into it. And so anyway, all that to say, I think some folks who feel like the industry is out to get them have lost sight of the fact that at the end of the day, it is a business, and so that can be a tough pill to swallow sometimes if you've only been in your little artist brain and everything you write needs to be heard. Anyway,
you and I seem to be cut from similar cloth because I understand that it's a business. However, and I bet you would probably agree with this, which is I really don't like it when people say it's just business, which is a cheap way of justifying when they do screw somebody. Business is business, meaning you have to separate the emotional side from the business side, especially when you're dealing with creative stuff like music or maybe film or graphic art, whatever. But you're still dealing with human beings, and you have to treat them honorably, and you have to hold up your end of the business. That's business. Yeah. Is I give you something of value and you give me money in exchange for it. Yay.
Yeah, and if you feel like Taxi's a scam, go call Taxi. I about guarantee you will take their call and you'd be happy to talk to him, because 5 minutes of talking to you realize, wow, this Michael is a genuine business person, right? He's running a business here. It's not a charity. It's not a philanthropic endeavor. You're looking to have a career.
It was the first few years.
Aren't all businesses. But talk to him. I mean, don't Taxi even offer a refund? Like, isn't there like a money back kind of
for a full year?
So
yeah, anyway, we don't encourage people obviously to take advantage of that, and some people do. And I knew when I instituted the full year money back guarantee that some people would. I just had to respond to an email this morning that was sent to me by my staff. Excuse me, rockstar burp again. That somebody had joined, did the 2-year discount special. At the end of the first year, they said, I want my money back. And we said, happy to give it to you. Just want to let you know that you can't renew. And they said, oh, in that case, I'll stick it out for the second year. And then at the end of the second year, they went fallow for a year, I believe, and then came back and did a third year. And at the end of the third year, asked for a refund again. And we said, no, the reason we offer the refund for a year is we want you to experience all that Taxi is. You can't figure it out in 30, 60, or 90 days. But you also can't be a member for 3 years, because that says I liked it enough that I was there for 3 years and get a refund. They were trying to screw us. So
it's like finishing a 24-hour epic audiobook and then at the very end saying, I'll take a refund. And Audible will give you your money to an extent. I mean, you can't abuse that policy. I mean, my greater point is that on some level, haters gonna hate. I do YouTube videos. I get like student course evaluations at the end of every month, and so some students they just don't like what you're selling, and that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
but the vast majority are very, very satisfied, students who feel served, and so those are the people that I'm not giving any energy to somebody who's gonna like just hate on me or in the YouTube comments and something. I'll say thank you, and I really honestly and earnestly appreciate you watching, but I'm not going to engage with you. There's nothing good can happen from arguing with internet strangers.
I wish I could do what I dish out to our members, which is don't let a return throw you into a downward spiral. I still do get really bothered when somebody isn't happy with Taxi. It's my song, and I want them to love it. But I
get it.
I want to understand how we can be better, but I will ruminate on that. I spent the whole weekend thinking and working on Taxi stuff because it's my nature.
Yeah, I mean, I still get feedback from my publishers. One of the publishers that I write for that I got through Taxi recently sent me like a 5-minute audio file and like a
Wow.
750 word like response on one of my placements. I'm sorry, on one of my submissions.
Yeah.
And at first, I was a little like, "Oh, hey, don't you know who I am? This is not my first rodeo." But once I let my ego kind of chill out, it was a free lesson. I mean, he was giving me gem after gem after gem, which I can then carry forward. And the fact that he recorded like a 5-minute audio file of, hey, this is exactly what you need to change, because
Really, really rare.
it is. But at the end of the day, man, we are all in this together. We're partners. Like, the publisher doesn't work for me. We're in the same rowboat. We're on opposite sides, but we're all rowing in the same direction. And so when you think that somebody else in the industry is combative and you think they're against you, no, that publisher genuinely wants me to succeed. He wants my music to be better because his success is quite literally, or my success is quite literally his success.
Yeah.
Because we're yoked, equally yoked, if you will.
Yeah.
But I was, again, once my ego kind of and my pride, got into the back seat, then I realized that this was enormously valuable information, and I was very, very thankful for it.
I completely concur, and I'm really glad that you met him, because it's extremely rare that somebody would do that. But he was investing in you.
Yep.
It's self-serving, but in a very menschy way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's again, if I get placement, he gets paid. Everybody wins.
Yeah. Well, that kind of answers what was going to be my next question. Again, talking about people in the industry, that the misheld or misguided belief that is a hangover from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and the record deal side of the industry. People in my experience, my observation, I know many, many owners of music libraries, is that they're not out to screw musicians because they win when you win. And you just summarized it so nicely with that one story that,
yeah.
If you could just answer the question in this way, have you found that, I'm not telling you how to answer the question, I'm just saying let's get a short answer and move on. And the answer is, or the question is, have you found that people who run libraries are generally honest, hardworking people, and they're not trying to find a way to screw musicians?
No, they're not looking to take advantage, and I want to believe that Taxi wouldn't enter into any type of business relationship with any library who's looking to take advantage, and vacuum up and
Right.
and all of that. I want to believe that. I have no way of, I have no metric of tracking that, but I want to believe that part of your end of the bargain is to make sure that you're bringing quality people to the table. And
Absolutely.
so I've never experienced a library. I've experienced a library who has taken my track and then just kind of done nothing with it, and they didn't get any more music from me. It's cool. It's all good. Let's just part ways. I guess I'm just not a fit, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah, and maybe at the time they signed you, they thought this is really good. We could probably find somebody that needs this, and ultimately they didn't. It wasn't an intentional. Why would they go to the trouble of doing the due process, or what do you call it when you vet something? Making sure.
Like entering, like sending me out a schedule and putting it into my PRO, registering it with CSAC and all that.
Why would they do that if they
takes
didn't
time
think
and
they
money,
could make
right.
money?
That's right.
All right, I'm going to skip over some stuff in the middle here because we're running a little short on time. I've got a bone to pick with you, Dave, he says with a wink and a smile.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's right, damn it. I just invited you on the show so I could embarrass you publicly.
The gotcha journalism.
Actually, in your video about cracking the code with Jeff LaPlante and Chris Moser, one of Chris Moser's excellent tracks called Spy Thing, which is kind of like an Ocean's 11 kind of thing. Really, really well done. At the end of it, you said something like, well, if that didn't get forwarded, then Taxi is truly broken. And I was like, Dave, it's because now everybody who didn't get something forwarded is going to think Taxi's broken. You left one very important thing out of that, which is if it didn't get forwarded for the right listing.
Right.
So let's talk about that. You clearly understand the drill, and let's talk about Am I right in saying you could have the greatest music in the world, the greatest single piece of music in the world, but if it's not what that music supervisor
it's not
needs,
what they're looking for,
right?
I mean, yeah, I've seen, at Full Sail, I've seen students submit tracks which are amazing, but they get an F because it didn't hit the project. Right? Part of what I'm teaching is teaching students to be able to submit to and giving the client what they're asking for. Because what we're all looking to do here is to craft a sustainable living making music, right? It's one of the things that I talk about as a teacher, just in general, across the board. And so I think absolutely you can have an amazing piece of music, but if it's not what they're looking for, I mean, if you go to a restaurant and you order like a steak and they hit you with fish, it might be the best tilapia or whatever that you've ever existed.
Yeah.
But you didn't order fish, you ordered steak. My comment about Jeff's track was less about Taxi being broken and more about how amazing his work is.
Yeah.
And knowing that he had, somewhat cracked the code. That was more a comment on just how talented both of those guys are.
Really,
so
really
it was, again, less an indictment on Taxi.
I know.
System.
I really didn't take offense at it. I just had the thought as I watched it thinking, God, I wish he'd just included that one phrase because, again, yeah, I'm repeating myself, but the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, I will say that, I get a lot of students who will say, hey, this got rejected from Taxi. What do you think went? And what I'll ask for two things. I'll ask for their feedback form that they got, and I'll ask for the brief. Yep. Show me the brief. Because if you just say, I got rejected, and I don't know what the brief is, then there are myriad issues that could be going on. But if you show me the brief, then I can say, oh, here, and here. Not that I'm like perfect. Again, 27 returns. But often without the brief, there's no context. So, yeah.
Absolutely. My next, we've talked about this already. I know I've said this many times before, but the vast majority of music that doesn't get forwarded by Taxi, maybe as much as 80%, that's just a shoot from the hip guesstimate, is because it just doesn't fit the request. The aforementioned, vintage metal sent in for 60s vintage jazz. They're just, if it were like Americana and folk, okay, I can understand the gray area there and how that mistake could be made, but dear God, jazz and metal. Nope. And it didn't even have like jazz drums in the middle, It's writing what you want and trying to find a home for it versus seeing what they're asking for and writing to give them what they want. That's the difference. Yep. Okay, so now that you've been on the side of the industry where you've got direct relationships with some libraries, and to continue this thought a little further, if they sent you a brief, the library that sends you briefs every week or however often they do that, do you now as a professional feel that there's a little wiggle room when you see those briefs to go, I know that they're looking for this, and I don't really do that, but I could bastardize, something by putting in a harmonica. It'll make them feel like it's Americana. Or are you now you've reached a level of professionalism where you don't try to put the square peg in the round hole?
Yeah, that's wasting my time. It's just a waste of time because they ordered steak, but I really feel like making fish, and I hope they like fish. No, they ordered steak. If I wanted to do that, then I would just make my own music and put it out on Spotify to satisfy whatever creative itch I felt I needed to scratch.
There you go.
Right, but doing that for a library, again, they're trying to run a business. They're not for us. They're not against us. They're for us. We're in the same boat. Blah 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 blah. No, that's a waste of my time. Is that succinct enough for you?
Yeah, very, very succinct. I was actually going to move on to the topic of royalty-free music libraries, but I'm going to skip it just because we don't really have time, I don't think.
Yeah, it's 8:18.
Yeah, but I would love to have you come out for the Road Rally. If you can break away from school and come out. I want to do a panel at this year's Road Rally, a roundtable about royalty-free libraries. There's some good ones. There's some bad ones out there. People don't really understand the business model. I think that the more established legacy libraries that are kind of the core members of the Production Music Association despise them. Maybe they're a little terrified by them. It's an evolving business model that maybe has some merit. but maybe, like the water circling the drain in a race to the bottom on musicians getting screwed by getting no money. But we could do 90 minutes on that topic. So can you kind of summarize?
Well, I think
a
the
sentence?
fear is the same thing that's going on with like subscription service. Like so many of these royalty-free libraries are going to a subscription service where you pay your $30 a month and you get everything.
Oh,
and
you
that
can eat.
Just thins out the payouts across the board, right? And so the same reason that people have issues with software as a service for subscription, whether it's plugins or DAWs or whatever, I think it's cut from the same cloth because they see an erosion of profitability, and that's not a bad word. Profit's okay. It's okay for you to make a profit, but I think there is a little bit of race to the bottom. I think that the markets, those royalty markets, are really oversaturated, and there are select few which make out like bandits, whether they get added to a playlist or whether they just physically have more songs in the catalog. They've been at it longer than anybody else, and so their presence is known. But for somebody trying to break into those, man, it's like finding a needle in a stack of needles and hoping that they're looking for that size of needle. I had next to zero success in royalty free, and I tried, but it wasn't worth it. The buyouts, the limitations on back end, I don't think that's sustainable. It wasn't for me. I heard all of the success stories from people making six figures in royalty free. I wonder how they're able to do that now in the subscription era. But it didn't pan out for me personally. And so
I think
didn't put any more eggs in that basket.
The few people that do make really good money are probably people that started those companies and had a huge catalog of their own that they put in at the very beginning. And I don't want to call it a pyramid scheme, but there is a pyramid structure to it to some degree that early in, you're right, those people benefited the most.
The composer I know who's had, or a handful of composers I know who've had some moderate success, was just that. They had a catalog that hadn't found any homes, and they just like backed up the dump truck and just dumped them all in. And so suddenly they have a huge footprint in the marketplace. And that was, several years ago. And so that's just a story.
All right. Well, hopefully you can come out for the Road Rally and be part of that round table.
I appreciate the invite. Yeah.
There's a podcaster in our niche, our ballpark, that recommends not using a service like Taxi, but instead do the work yourself. Identify dozens of companies, identify who the key person is at each of the companies, craft a very business-like email or phone script, contact those people, follow up, and repeat the process. He'd be shocked to know that more than 20 years ago, Taxi's brochure, which has gone out to several 100,000 people over like close to 20 years, said this: the second best way.
Nice.
I recognized that whole concept the day I started this company. Yeah, I know from personal experience in life and in business, nobody's going to work harder for you than you will. Mm-hmm. However, most people don't have the time, the bandwidth, the business chops to even write a succinct 3-sentence email that gets right to the point and is very clear in what it says. It's scary. Musicians, creative people in general, I have observed over many years, they're scared to death to ask for a sale, and that's how business is done. Here's what I'm offering. Would you like to buy it? You've got to ask for the sale. And so they don't want to do that. And that's why I created Taxi, because people have day jobs. They have families. They have life responsibilities. But I want to go on record that our mutual acquaintance, I wish he kind of wouldn't point fingers at Taxi like we're committing some sin by doing what we do. No, we overtly...
You're just the largest player in this space, and so it's an easy target. It's an easy punching bag, and so it's like what I mentioned earlier. If that is worth less than $10 a week for you, then have at it. Go for it. It's not. This isn't for you. Just step away. No need to disparage anybody. But for me, it's a steal as far as what Taxi offered and the interaction and the relationships and all that. So yeah.
What do people spend on Starbucks? I forget. I used to know a number. The average person, spends on coffee a week.
I'm pleading the fifth on that one.
We've had.
I am pleading the fifth on that one.
What does that drink cost? $6?
You, on the advice of counsel, I have been advised not to answer that question.
Does it cost as much as a gallon of gasoline today?
No, thankfully, no, it doesn't. Thankfully.
Yeah, let's do some quick math here. Not pointing any fingers at you, Dave. But let's see.
No, it's all good.
Calculator. Okay, there's my calculator. So let's say you spend $5 a day, and you only go to Starbucks on work days if you work in an office, which nobody seems to anymore. So that's 21 days per month. 5 times 21 equals $105 a month times 12 months a year, which is $1,260 a year on Starbucks if you only go on work days, which we all know people go Saturday morning, and not only do they get the coffee, but they get the
Michael, I'm feeling personally attacked here. I'm going to need you to.
Do you need a safe space, Dave?
Here. Yes, I do. I'm triggered here. Says
Anyway.
the guy pounding down rock stars every week.
No, those are free. The company gives them to us for the road rally.
Fair enough. All
yeah,
right.
but I did order a case because these have so much sugar in it, and I have found that by just giving a reasonable attempt at cutting back my sugar, that I dropped 6 or 7 pounds. So I don't drink the ones with sugar in them anymore, except for today, because I went out and ordered a couple cases of what's that stuff called, Red Bull, the sugar-free Red Bull, as a replacement. So there you go. Okay, so there's that. All right. I think, let's see, we've got 3.5 minutes left. Dave has a thing. He's wearing it on his shirt. You need to move your microphone. There you go.
I do. I know. Yeah.
52cues.com, which is a community of like-minded people. Those of you watching the show today would find value in what he does. So do a couple minutes on 52cues.com.
Yeah, 52Cues is a production music community which started out as a Facebook group, actually, like 3 or 4 years ago. We grew up to about 1,000 members. And the term 52Cues is borrowed from Dan Graham's book. It's not even borrowed. He didn't coin that phrase. But in his book, A Composer's Guide to Library Music, Dan from Gothic Storm, production music house, writes trailer music and all of that, talks about if you focus on writing just one quality piece of music a week, then over the course of a career, you can really create a groundswell of cues that you can then leverage into a career, right? Focusing on one cue a week. And there's this kind of bubble, as you're starting to learn how to write music and learn about the industry. You start by writing one cue a week, and then you get good at it, and then you write multiple cues a week. I personally average anywhere between 3 to 4 cues a week. But then on the other side of that, that bell curve, you can start being really a lot more selective. And so you end up writing one cue per week. So 52 Cues is a community dedicated to that ideal. We offer, it's free to join, and it's no longer on Facebook. It's on its own independent network, right? And folks can come in, they can share their cues, they can leave feedback, they can receive feedback on their cues. And we also have other subscription tiers offering interactive workshops. We offer tiers which offer interactive feedback sessions. So every Wednesday or Tuesday afternoon, we sit and we listen to each other's cues, and I give live feedback. We also, like I mentioned, workshops and lots of other programs, mastermind groups, lessons, weekly office hours. The whole idea, it's not just a course. Like 52 Cues isn't just a course that you subscribe to. It's all about creating real-time interactive feedback. And I see all the time folks coming with their taxi questions. And I think 52 Cues really dovetails really well. I see it every single week. Hey, I'm submitting this for this taxi brief. What do you think? And it's not a replacement for the taxi forums, because you're going to get entirely different feedback over at the taxi forums than you do here, and you don't have to choose.
Why is that? Why would the feedback be different in one place than the? I mean, obviously, if 10 people look at the Mona Lisa, they're all going to focus on different things, maybe. But do you think there's a reason why the feedback might be different from the other?
Well, because you might have people in the taxi forums who are intimately familiar with Taxi versus people not in, like people over at 52Qs who are familiar with greater production music as a whole, or maybe they come from a different background and maybe they know how to mix rock or whatever. And so I think it's a broader spectrum, but it really goes hand in hand. And my point is that it's not, you don't have to choose either or, right? If you make a Taxi submission, I wholeheartedly encourage you to put it in the peer-to-peer forums and over at the feedback thread. And because one of the main mantras of 52Qs is together we are better. I'm not, this is my educational philosophy. I'm not like on my pedestal saying snatch the pebble from my hand, grasshopper. Right? This information is, I want to freely give it to you. I am not holding on to any industry secrets, and I don't have all the answers. But together we can look at creating and helping others through mutual feedback and respect, and crafting a sustainable career in the production music industry. And that's the heart of feedback. And we have merch and swag and all that other stuff. So yeah, that's what 52Qs is about. Like I said, you can go to 52qs.com, join up. You can join up for free. If you never subscribe, that's cool. Love to have you. But if you're really looking to put into your career alongside, Taxi and what Taxi does, but 52Qs I think can really, really help you. And it's not, like I said, it's not just a course. It's much more interactive than that.
Well, that's great. I will stop by. You sent me the link. I will. I would love to be interviewed by you. And
I would love to have you on and come do a Q&A for the community and just answer questions. Because there are questions that I don't know the answer to, and like understanding how the screening process works, and I think that would be hugely valuable. Yeah,
I think somewhere in one of your videos, the one with Jeff and Chris, you said that Taxi is enigmatic. It's amazing after 30 years, almost 31 years, that people still don't know. It's like, oh yeah, Taxi, they charge musicians money, so therefore they must be evil because everything should be free. And people really don't. Yeah, people really don't know what it is we do. So. Yeah. Anyway, it's been a great pleasure having you on. You're my favorite former Taxi member.
Your ex.
Yes, that's right. I like you a lot better than my ex-wife. First wife.
Well, I will take that as high praise. And again, I really, I'm not sponsored by Taxi, and I just think it's a really good idea. And I have zero qualms encouraging any of my students to push into Taxi because. And it's not for everybody, but it's been a success for me, and the value that I think that Taxi adds to the greater sync music, production music landscape, I think is much more than the $5 or whatever.
And record deals and publishing deals. By the way, we get so used because so many of our members are successful with sync. We had a woman that had the #1 female jazz record of the year 3 or 4 years ago, all because of one Taxi forward. So she got signed to a deal and had the #1 record that year. So we still do that stuff. We just like to talk about the film and TV stuff because there's just a lot more of it.
But I really, really appreciate you having me, and looking forward to seeing you over at 52Qs. Join us. Absolutely.
I will absolutely do that. Thanks again, ladies and gentlemen. Where's my sheet? There we go. All right, this is Dave Kropf from 52qs.com, and I'm going to give out his phone number and his home address right now. Just kidding.
And my high school mascot and favorite.
That's right, your mother's maiden name. All that stuff. Anyway, Dave, thank you so much for doing this. Really enjoyed it. It was a great chat, and hope to see you soon, buddy. Right, bye-bye.